right, election promises are rolling, so are barbs over security clearances and finances, and Alberta's Premier sparks unity concerns. From Montreal, this is Night Talk episode 26. I'm Gary MacDonald.
And from Tulum Beach, Mexico, this is Eddie Tekalik.
Well, the promises are rolling as Canadians prepare to cast their votes on April 28th. The political landscape is heating up. With the parties rolling out promises and trading sharp political shots, we are being bombarded with what some are somewhat competing visions for the country's future. So tonight we break down some of the key moments in the first week of what's being described as one of the most critical campaigns in the country's history. It began last Sunday afternoon when newly minted Liberal Prime Minister Mark Carney paid a visit to Governor General Mary Simon to receive her approval. The Liberal leader held a media availability shortly after.
We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty. Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen. We're over the shock of the betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons. We have to look out for ourselves. We have to look out for each other. We can control our destiny. We can have a new Canada built by us, for us. We can give ourselves more than any foreign government can take away. And the best way we can deal with this crisis is to build our strength here at home and help people who will be hit hardest by these tariffs. That's the right thing to do. That's the fair thing to do. That's the Canadian thing to do. That's what makes us strong.
I respect the office of the President of the United States, and we have to show respect to other world leaders. The bottom line is the Americans buy 75% of our goods. So whoever's the Prime Minister is going to have to, at some point, deal with President Trump. He was only elected a short time ago. He's going to be around for 4 more years. You can be respectful and firm, and I believe we have to be both. I will insist the President recognize the independence and sovereignty of Canada. I will insist that he stop tariffing our nation. And at the same time, I will strengthen our country so that we can be capable of standing our own 2 feet and standing up to the Americans where and when necessary. That's what it means when I say, let's put Canada first for a change.
Well, let's be clear. Donald Trump has come out and endorsed Mark Carney. Elon Musk has endorsed Pierre Poilievre. I'm the only federal candidate that is 100% not endorsed by the Donald Trump administration. This is day one of the election campaign. I'm running to be Prime Minister of this country because I believe people deserve a Prime Minister that's going to work for them every single day. And that's what New Democrats do. We work for working people. We work for everyday families. And I think people deserve that. So that's what we're going to do. We'll worry about the results of the election afterwards. I'm running for Prime Minister because I believe in you and I choose you.
I do not have the feeling that Quebecers trust so much Mr. Poilievre. And I do not have the feeling that Quebecers know so much about Mr. Carney. So if what they propose is good, they have nothing to fear, because as we did in the last 6 years, we will support what is good for Quebec. And if something is not good for Quebec, what would be the point for Quebecers to support somebody that will do something bad for Quebec? So I believe that I might not want to become Prime Minister of Canada, believe me, But I will be as strong a leader as I can.
So that was the opening day, and there was one thing that seemed to be very, very much in common as far as a lot of the comments, and that was the current administration in the Oval Office south of the border. And no question about it, as you know, we're into day 4 now of the election campaign, Eddie, and it seems that that aspect of the campaign is, you know, that it's a cornerstone of the campaign almost, because every day that name keeps coming up in one of the discussions during the media availabilities following announcements, and you know, it's there. It's his presence is just hanging over this campaign like a dirty sock hanging out a window kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, the reality of the Canadian election campaign is that Donald Trump is a ballot box issue. Anyone running for election in Canada who does not see that as an issue shouldn't be running for leadership, right? So it's going to be a predominant topic of discussion. Not only that, Garrett, I mean, forget about, let's just put the candidates to the side for a second. Donald Trump is a ballot box issue for the voters of Canada. Let's call a spade a spade. You know, every conversation that I've had with colleagues and whatnot, and what I'm seeing on social media, and whatever exchanges I am having with people, Donald Trump has become one of the top issues across the country in terms of where we're going to be actually placing our X for which party and which leader, based upon what we're going to be seeing the candidates saying on how they're going to be managing the Trump administration. You know, like we're looking at another, you know, Poilievre, I think it was Poilievre who said, we're looking at another three and 3/4 years of the chaos down in the United States. I mean, you know, just looking at the damages that have been inflicted and the confusion that has been inflicted here in Canada and globally just by a 2-month plus administration that's been in place. So Donald Trump is a ballot box issue. And I thought I saw somewhere on a recent survey that 35% to 40% of Canadian voters are saying that this is an issue. 35% of what they're concerned about is the top issue for them. And it's funny though, you and I were, you know, chatting about what are the issues going to be once Trudeau resigned. And, you know, we talked about housing, economy is always on the top of somebody's mind. What are we going to be doing for energy sufficiency, so on and so forth. And now the top issue for Canadians is Donald Trump. How the tides have turned in a matter of 4 or 5 months. It's unbelievable.
Well, in much the same way, Eddie, as when you look at where the New Democrats are running right now in the polls. So first of all, we had that resurgence of the Liberals coming back and basically erasing a 20-some point lead that the Conservatives have had over the last year or two. And it's gone. And now you look at the New Democrats, and it looks like they're paying a price for cozying up to Trudeau and the Liberals and keeping Trudeau propped up for so long, because they're down now in single digits. And I think it was the poll you were looking at just before we started the stream. I think they were around 7%, 8%, wasn't it?
No, it was 6% actually. The last one.
Yeah. I mean,
that's they went down from 15. Listen, we saw this at 15%. They were at about 15% November, I think it was. I mean, to go from 15% to 6%, as you had mentioned earlier on to me, high danger. They're not even going to be an official party once the election is finished. Unreal.
Yeah, and you know, you have to have 12 seats for official party status, and at the rate they're going, like 6% across the country on average.
Yeah,
they're not even going to be running a close third at this rate, and so, you know, Singh keeps saying today. I heard him a couple of times saying that Well, I've been behind before, and we've come back, and we can do it again. I'm running to be prime minister, and even Tom Mulcair took a swing at Singh, if you will, because he said he has to face reality. He's not running to be prime minister. He's running now just to try and save official party status, and that's it. And he's going to be lucky if he can do that. And this is his third election, I think it is, as leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that at the rate it's going, either on the night of April the 28th or within a day or two after the 28th, that we're going to be receiving a resignation from Jagmeet Singh. It's just that simple.
Yeah,
and
very obvious.
Surely he'll have enough sense to just resign for the good of the party at that point, instead of being forced out like Trudeau was. And he hung around with that deal with Trudeau and the Liberals. He hung around with that deal for 2 months too long, really. Anything after the first 2 months, it was a wash. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic to watch, just how far down the NDP drops. And again, that'll be a party that has always just been sort of hanging in there, except for the Jack Layton push a few years ago. And if they lose official party status this time, I think the New Democratic Party, as we now know it, will be just really a glint in someone's eye when they're talking about politics going down the road.
Yeah, very similarly to what we saw when Mulroney had his last mandate, and then I believe Chrétien won the next election. The PC, the Progressive Conservative Party, barely held on to official party status. I think they actually lost it. And how many years did it actually take, or how many prime ministerial mandates went by them before they actually re-energized the concepts of the Progressive Conservative Party? I think it was like something like 12 years, 12 ballots before they actually got back to official party status and some power. And it was fueled by a lot of parties out in Western Canada. So you know what? It's going to be a tough climb for the NDP if ever they make it back onto the political scene here in Canada.
And we have a comment. It just popped up, I think. I've got a couple of screens. Yeah. And that is exactly what T-Rump wants, all the headlines all the time. No doubt about that. The guy just feeds on that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, we're playing right into to his narcissistic personality. However, do we really have a choice? we have to kind of roll with it, the punches, and play into it, because every time he gets out of bed or he wakes up in the middle of the night and posts something to Truth Social, it somehow impacts us in some way, at least for a few hours, until he has another whimsical thought and he changes his mind on whatever. Yeah, exactly. So, unfortunately, we have, another 24 days of listening to how he's impacting us on a daily basis. And I don't know if I can handle it, to be honest. I don't have any hair left to pull out, so I don't know what the hell I'm going to deal with this.
And we're not drinking any Kentucky sipping bourbon anymore either. So I don't know what you're doing.
Well, you know what? I've really taken I always liked a certain brand that has a crown in the name of it. I'm not going to promote them, but and it's tasting a lot better every sip I have. So anyhow, so let's look at some of the promises that have rolled out. Now, today, Mark Carney was in Windsor, and he was rolling out automotive industry support and a $2 billion fund aimed at enhancing the competitiveness of Canada's automotive sector. And the initiative is to boost domestic car parts manufacturing and reduce reliance on cross-border components. So keep all of our parts on this side, manufacture them all on this side of the border for vehicles we're assembling in Canada. And I believe he also made a commitment that government purchases going forward would be strictly Canadian-produced vehicles as well.
Mm-hmm.
Tax reforms. Now, I don't know about you, but on Monday, I found it kind of the lines were blurred between the Conservatives and the Liberals with the promises that were rolling out, because we have tax reforms. The Liberals proposing a middle-class tax cut aiming to alleviate financial pressures on average Canadians, and the Conservatives came out with a tax reduction worth about $14 billion in annual income tax cut, which would save the average worker approximately $900 per year.
Right.
That doesn't seem like such a great return on investment. I'm sorry, but...
No, that's the first reaction I had. I mean, look, any money is good in your pocket. I'm never going to say no to a couple of dollars, but you figured if you really want to make an impact with the voters in Canada, I think they would have been expecting a little more than $900 a year. It's not a whole lot of money if you really think about it. And then, of course, the other discussion you and I will always have is where is he going to get the money?
Yep.
Right.
Now, today he said he wouldn't touch some of the programs like the dental program and the daycare program, but there was a condition attached to that. Anyone who's enrolled in those programs now, they won't have to worry. So it sounds to me like if the Conservatives form government, you're grandfathered in, you're fine, but there will be no new additions to those programs. So that one is really smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I mean, how does that sway a voter? I mean, look, I'm not eligible for the dental program, but I was waiting for a time when I would become eligible for it, and I could certainly use that kind of help. And now Mr. Poilievre is saying that, whoa, hang on a second, you may not be eligible for this anymore. I'm not sure. That really doesn't give me the warm and fuzzy. I mean, although to me it's not the primary issue in terms of where my vote's going to be cast, but it's something that's in the back of my mind,
Now, the other thing that Poilievre was focused on today when he made a stop here in Quebec was he was focused on seniors. And one of the things that he rolled out was that you would only, remember they were talking about raising the retirement age to 70, I think it was?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Okay, he said today, no, it'll remain at 65, and your OAS and GIS will be based on 65 as well. And what was the other one? Oh, he was increasing the tax exemption income. Like you, as a senior, your first $24,000 of income per year is tax-free.
Right.
And he's proposing to up that by $10,000 up to $34,000 per year tax-free.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of strange, because if I have $24,000 tax-free right now, and I'm still paying income tax every year when I, am I really getting my $24,000 tax-free? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
With all of the other deductions that I have, something doesn't seem right. But anyway, I'll just go along with it. So, housing affordability, the Conservatives are talking about measures to make housing more affordable, addressing concerns over rising home prices. And I think it was no GST on homes up to $1.3 million in value. And that's very similar to what the Liberals did too. They were doing no GST on, I think it was first-time homes up to
Yeah, right.
$1 million.
Yeah.
Like, when you're buying a new home and you have to put out like $30,000, $35,000, $36,000, $40,000 in GST on top of all of your other expenses. There's something wrong with that picture. And then if you resell the house, the person who's buying the house from you, they don't have to pay GST on it.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah.
That is so freaking unfair. And it burned my butt big time 11 years ago, yesterday, when I had to write a $30-some-odd thousand check for GST when we bought our condo in St. John.
That's right. It was a new building. That's right.
Yep. And so, like, it just burned me to no end to have to write that amount of money. And no wonder young people today are having a hard time when the interest rates went up, the mortgage rates started going up, and then you've got the GST on top of that. Man, oh man, like.
Yeah. And the deposit went up as well. So I mean, they're getting whammied all over the place from there's a lot of things going on that's preventing them to be able to afford a brand new home. I mean, forget about Toronto and Vancouver. I mean, Montreal is becoming expensive, and the rest of the country is becoming equally expensive. How are our offspring and the younger generation supposed to afford anything unless we're talking about two people living together in a home and both making over $100,000 a year, and even then it's a struggle at those types of rates.
It is. Yeah, even when you get into the rental market now, the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
And by the way, I found it interesting. I was watching Singh the other day, Monday morning, and he was doing a housing policy announcement here in Montreal. And I'm looking and I'm thinking, that looks familiar. And I kept watching, and it was snowing at the time as well. It was just over here, just down the canal, where the outdoor gym set up under the overpass.
Yeah,
that's where they were. And some of that is federal land still, and that was his pitch. Was he said, I was here during the last federal election campaign, and I want to take any vacant federal land in the country and build housing, so that affordable housing units. And so he said, I came back here again today to try and drive that point home. And there is a fair amount of federal land all along the canal and in that area.
The Peel Basin, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So what else do we have here for some of the promises? Okay, well, let's look at the New Democrats. Social programs, the NDP emphasizing the expansion of social programs, including initiatives to make the move affordable for Canadians. Initiatives to make the move affordable for Canadians. Somewhere along the way, a word got dropped there. Public services, commitments to keep essential services public and accessible, ensuring they serve the needs of all citizens. Future security proposals focus on shaping a secure future through sustainable policies and equitable economic strategies. What the hell does that mean?
that was a mouthful.
What policy wonk wrote that?
Who, out of whose mouth did that come out from?
The New Democrats.
NDPs, okay.
Yeah.
That was a lot of verbal diarrhea, I hate to tell you.
Or if you're having a conversation with media types, word salad. That's all. Huge word salad. Jeez. Like, okay, it's like I used to say to these guys, every so often you'd have a leader and you ask a question and they'd go off on this scripted answer that they had memorized or whatever. Right. Anyway, and I'd just be standing there looking, and they'd finish, And I'd say, okay, Mr. Premier, could you put that in language that the average person sitting in Tim Hortons or Starbucks right now can understand? Because I don't. So how am I going to tell them the story? And they just would look at me like,
Yeah. Oh, I wish I knew you in your heyday to be a fly on the wall.
yeah, there are stories. Anyway, so that's kind of an overview of the promises. Now, a lot of these promises that are rolling out, and and there was one the other day where Carney was in Halifax at Halifax shipyards, and made another major commitment to defense spending, and to me that's long overdue. And yes, it's not going to help the budget figures any, but it's an investment. It's an investment in our future, and it's our future security as well. And you can't put a price tag on your security, and especially with the geopolitical climate as it's evolving now, when we're basically we're mushroomed in between Russians and Chinese on one side and the United States and the current administration on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not a great position to be in. So yeah, any money we spend, and he's talking about making sure that the armed forces get raises, long overdue.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope there's substantial raises, because how else are you going to attract some of the brightest from the private sector to come into the military? Because the whole thing with the military is getting much more technology driven.
Well, we talked about the recruiting issues last week.
Yeah.
The Canadian military has been having a hell of a time recruiting these bright minds and soldiers, for that fact.
Yeah. Okay, and you guys are thinking about Quebec and the East, where the housing is more reasonable. Think about Ontario, Toronto, Vancouver, where houses for $1 million, you're getting garbage. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that, for sure. And even look at here in Montreal now, over the last couple of years, between prices for housing and rent, I've noticed a change in the almost 4 years we've been here. So. And even I look at New Brunswick now. During the pandemic, a lot of people sold their houses in Ontario and moved to New Brunswick and Nova Scotia to a lesser degree, and PEI. But New Brunswick's population was one of the first major growth spurts in years during the pandemic, because they could pick up houses for dirt cheap compared to what they were in Ontario. And they're getting some beautiful homes. But all of a sudden, what happens? The average price just keeps shooting up. And
demand and supply.
Yep. And then you hear a lot of native hashtag Johners or New Brunswickers saying, like, what the hell happened? Like, prices have doubled, tripled. Well, yeah, you're right. It was the law of supply and demand. So you have that aspect of it. Anyway, the first 4 days have been expensive as far as promises are concerned, and I'm not sure how much more they can roll out.
Well, you know what I mean. This is what week one, where we're in.
We're not even a full week yet.
Not even a full week yet. So,
yeah.
Look, I think for the next week or two, they're going to get a lot of fluff, a lot of what we just called verbal diarrhea and whatnot, and just spewing things out right off the bat to try to get the attention of the Canadian voter. But I think as things are going to settle down a little more, a lot of focus and a lot of attention is going to be placed on the upcoming debate that we're all expecting and looking forward to. And you know what? I think the knockout blows, in my opinion, are actually going to be happening there during the debate. So maybe the leaders are not letting their plans and the cat out of the bag yet. They're just responding to the microphones in front of them and photo ops and whatnot. I think they're holding their surprise promises and surprise pitches until the actual debate itself, and then spend the next few weeks defending what was actually said during the debate into the election. So I think they're being very. It's a very planned approach where they're not actually coming out and saying everything they're going to be doing, and they're all basically speaking about the same thing right now from the interviews that I have seen. I know you've seen a lot more than I have, but it seems to be the same fluff, just kind of massaged in a different way and presented in a different way more than anything else. I mean, both Poilievre and Carney, they spoke about tax cuts, and okay, the amounts are different, but the challenges are always going to be basically the same. Where are they going to get this money to do that? On top of everything else that they need to do, and on top of having to convince Canadians that they're the right people to deal with the Trump administration. So right now, it's just a lot of common ideas being presented in front of microphones and television cameras. But I think the knockout blows in terms of what they're actually planning to do are going to be said during the debate. I think they've got the French and English one set for the middle of the month, if I'm not mistaken, right, Gary?
Yeah, on the 17th and the 18th of April. And there was going to be a TVA debate as well, but the Liberals pulled out of that one. And that, I'm not sure why they did that. All of the other parties agreed, and what TVA said was, we'll run this debate because it would focus more on Quebec than even the national French debate. That's going across the country, and that's for francophones across the country. But there are 70 some odd seats in Quebec up for grabs. So yeah, and what they said was they asked each party to kick in $300,000 towards the production costs. And Carney was asked the day that it was pitched. He was asked during a scrum with reporters, and he said, well, why not? And later that day, the party came out and said, no, we're not taking part. And so the debate was scrubbed. And a lot of people thought that was going to stick, to the Liberals, and they got a bit of flack for it, but it seemed to have, they had the Teflon suits on and just kind of seemed to slide off.
Yeah.
However,
TVA backed off as well, right?
Yeah, because what was the point at that stage if you didn't have the Liberal Party in there as well? So I think that was tactically. I think that was not a smart move on the Liberals' part, as far as walking away from that debate. And I think it may come back. It's kind of died down now, but I think it might come back to haunt them at some point as well. Although Carney seems to be resonating with Quebecers in general, and at the moment, the Liberals seem to be gaining some momentum here in Quebec as well. And the question is, okay, is it coming at the expense of the Conservatives, who really didn't have? They had some seats here, but they're not heavy hitters.
Right.
All right. So is it coming at the expense of the Bloc? And that is something that the political watchers are starting to keep an eye on. Is that coming at the expense of the Bloc? So that's going to be something to see. And certainly, again, I don't get it. I think the Liberals are lucky that it didn't really stick to them yet, unless somehow somebody manages to dig it up again partway through the campaign and hits the right note with it so that it does stick. It remains to be seen. Overall, a lot of money spent in the first 4 days of the campaign. I don't know what else they have left that they can drag out. I'm sure as they go across the country, there will be some regional things that they can offer up. But man, oh man, I don't know.
So what are you saying? Everything that had to be said has already been said leading up to the announcement of the election in the last 4 or 5 days. That you don't think there are going to be any surprises come debate time?
Well, the debates will really prove to be interesting. I think Polyev is going to be. He's going to have to come out swinging, given the fact
sure.
that he and the party have blown a 20 some odd point lead. They have to come out swinging. He has to really be feeling the heat from this. So, and he'll be going after Carney, and watching Carney. Carney so far, the odd time you can see he's getting a little irritated with a question or questions about the same thing over and over again. But he's maintaining a very, very, calm appearance for the most part. Very diplomatic, very prime ministerial, if you will.
Right.
So I don't know. And certainly, especially in the French debate, I have to give the guy full marks. And he'll say, my French isn't the best, but he's not running away from it in any form at all. He just jumps right in, and each time he does, like his French, I think is getting a little better. It's the same as batting a few golf balls around. You bat enough of them, then eventually you either get really okay at it, or you just realize that, right, no, this is not for me.
No, he's definitely getting more comfortable in his skin when he's dealing. Doesn't matter what language he's dealing with. Whether it's in English or in French, it just seems that his responses are very clear. They're very direct. And if he gets heckled by a reporter during a response, he'll politely rephrase what he had just said and make sure that the reporter clearly understood what he had said. I saw an interview earlier this week where a reporter asked him a question. It was kind of a yes or no question. Carney gave him an answer that resonated in a yes response, and the reporter came back and said, well, I'll take that as a no. And he clearly went back and said, no, that is not what I said. And he rephrased everything it said to him, which basically resonated as a yes. So, and I think this was a reporter from out west that was part of a far-right platform of sorts, a magazine or something.
Oh, okay.
He was very, very, very direct in the way he approached them. And I've also seen his French interviews. He does not, and you're right, he does not shy away from any question in French, and he will respond to it as best as he can and clearly. So with every passing interview, with every passing television appearance, it seems that his confidence level is becoming more prime ministerial with every event, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the first 4 days, my assessment would be no clear winners as far as somebody jumping out in front big time. And Carney had a bit of a mix-up yesterday regarding the Polytechnique, and I think it might have been, I didn't actually see it, and I only saw references to it this morning, but it may have been something that he misspoke in French. And again, he stood up and explained it, and it seemed like it's something that didn't gain legs. But have there been any clear winners in the first 4 days? No, I'd say that Carney and Polyev were pretty much on level ground.
Yeah.
Singh is starting to sound a little desperate.
Yeah.
And on Monday in particular, Sunday, Monday, if the billionaire, millionaire bashing that he did, it was like billionaire and millionaires every third or fourth word in the sentence.
Right.
That's all that came through. So, yeah, he's beginning to sound a little desperate. But my favorite guy so far in this campaign with his answers is Blanchette.
Yeah.
And we're going to have we have a couple of clips coming up here in a few minutes of Blanchette. And I just, like, there's something about him and the way he handles the questions and responds in English. And I love it. I just,
Yeah.
But you'll see what I'm getting at in a few minutes. Anyway, before we go any farther, I did reach out to our European contributor yesterday to just get initial reaction, if anyone over there was taking notice of the fact we're in the middle of an election campaign now. And so Christian took some time out to have a quick chat with me, and here we go. All right, to get a broader perspective on tonight's discussion, we're joined by our European correspondent, contributor, Christian Falk, who's in Switzerland, and we're going to talk a bit about the looming April 2nd trade deadline that the U.S. president has imposed on the rest of the world, as well as touch briefly on the Canadian election campaign and any sort of impact or how that's being watched in Europe as well. Christian, thanks for taking the time out to join us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get down to business here. What exactly is happening with that April 2nd tariff deadline looming, where everybody, it seems, in the world will get some kind of an envelope with the number, the percentage factor as far as tariffs are concerned from the U.S. What's happening over there now? Is there a lot of concern about this?
Well, looking into the mainstream news or mainstream newspapers, I think the all-over perception of this is that people more or less got tired about the topic. I mean, it's still in the newspapers, but we knew what was coming. The European Union, they formed a special task force to see on how we could counter those sanctions, but we're also looking for alternatives, strengthening our partnerships, trade partnerships with other continents or partners like, for example, Canada or China. So what we here specifically in Europe are wondering is if the American taxpayer actually, or the people in America, they actually understand on how a tariff works. This is like 101 education you get everywhere, like that in the very end, the tariffs are paid by the importers. And still we have the feeling that the American people are not really aware of it, but sooner or later they will realize what an impact it will have. We are more concerned about like the stability of the US itself, like inside, like the domestic market, and what impact this could have on the US inside. Yeah, not only internationally.
We have a new leader of the Liberal Party. He was Prime Minister for a week, technically still is Prime Minister through the election campaign. Somebody has to be head of government. However, it was within the first 2 days, he was sworn in on a Friday afternoon, and Sunday afternoon he was headed to France and then stop on Monday as well in the UK. How was that perceived?
Well, we all were looking, or we were wondering, he missed the traditional Washington stop, right? That was per tradition the first thing like the prime minister would meet up with. And it was like, here we say he like he has a very good reputation in Europe, specifically in the banking sector, but people are talking in general good words about McCarthy. We see it more like as we see him here as a chess player, and think that he's taking calculated decisions when it comes to countering Trump's tariff discussions, etc., etc. And we're welcoming him warmly, right? Like he himself said, like that Canada is the most European country outside the European Union, which it sounds really sweet to our ears.
So do you think that the European Union is really open to the idea of having Canada join and become a solid trading partner?
Well, there are discussions, and I don't hit me on all the articles, but two from three main points or main characteristics are already given that technically Canada could become a member of the European Union. It's like we have the same human rights. Like this is constituted like we're like in terms also of economy and trade partnerships. Like the third point, I don't actually remember, but the basis would be there if that really takes place. It's another thing, but we like the sound that, or we see that there's a shift, and people, especially the European Union, is getting more aware that we need to have more independence from the United States. And I think that's where we're partnering up also with Canada now. Like we were for far too long, we relied on the US as not only as a trade partner, but also in terms of defense. And with Canada on the North American part of the globe, that would be a strong partnership.
And that seems to be where Mark Carney now is focusing. A couple of his very early election promises focuses on strengthening our military and stepping up our defense. Now, that's something as well, I think, that he spoke to the President of France and the Prime Minister of Britain about when he was over there last week. Tell me this, the fact that he went to France and he went to Britain within 2 days of becoming Prime Minister, does that send a very strong message? How's that being interpreted throughout the European Union?
Here we really saw it as he's reaching out his hand to us for strong, like for partnership. You know, like we were really flattered by this gesture. Let's put it like this, but it also showed us that we're not the only people looking for the independence from the USA, and people are waking up, and we felt it was a really nice move from his side. But also we know that he is looking at his career, we know he is a chess player, and he is using it very strategically against the Trump administration. Definitely, that's on how we received it in here.
I find it interesting, the fact that you were telling me before we started recording that the media right now in Europe is not really paying a lot of attention to the Canadian election. Why do you think that is?
Well, at the moment, like look at the media, we're actually still so concerned about what's happening in the US that we're losing the view in terms of all what's happening on the rest of this world, you know? Like still the media, the press from the US is having a huge impact in here, even though we're getting tired about the tariff discussions. More what we're looking on how we could actually, but it's a big topic about Canada itself, where we will land once the election is done. In terms of trade partnerships or like a possible collaboration on defense, etc., etc. So, yeah, it's like at the moment, the USA is still overruling the whole media at the moment. Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, you should try living next door to it.
Yeah, exactly.
we're like the mouse sleeping next to the elephant.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Christian,
No, but I think
yeah.
the sooner I mean, the election is now on the 28th from what I remember. I think in the next 1-2 days, we will hear more from this, and then we can discuss about that next week.
All right. Christian, thank you for taking the time out to bring us up to date as to the European view on tariffs and elections and the U.S. president. Coming up, the uproar over security clearances and financial disclosures. First, though, a reminder, if you are enjoying Night Talk, please consider giving us a like, share, and or subscribe. It does help the channel grow, and Eddie and I are most appreciative of your support. All right, let's move along, and we're going to talk about security clearance and financial dealings, because there seemed to be, in the first day or so, a lot of talk about Mark Carney's financial situation and Pierre Poilievre's security situation. Liberal leader Mark Carney and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre have been trading barbs over security and finances. Carney has taken shots at Poilievre over his refusal to get his security clearance.
I find it beyond baffling. I find it downright irresponsible that the leader of the opposition, day after day, month after month, year after year, refuses to obtain his security clearance. As a normal course in peacetime when times were tranquil, that's unacceptable then. But at this point in our history, when we face the greatest threats that we faced in generations in most of our lifetimes, he has to answer for that.
I believe we are saying about the same thing, but I must say that if Mr. Poilievre wants to know things, he should get the security clearance and read things also about his own party.
Yesterday, Poilievre responded and fired another political shot in Carney's direction.
On the security clearance, I've already had a security clearance. What I will not do is because I was a cabinet minister, so I've already been cleared. What I will not do is commit to the oath of secrecy that the Liberals want to impose on me. They don't want me to be able to speak about these matters. So they'll bring me into a dark room and they'll say, well, we're going to give you a little bit of breadcrumbs of intel, and then we'll tell you you can't talk about any of this stuff anymore. So, for example, if they'd given me some kind of cursory briefing on China, then they would say, oh, you can't go talk about the fact that Mark Carney went off to Beijing and had meetings where he had secret talks with top government banking officials, after which a government bank gave his company a $250,000 loan, a loan that his company still owes, and a company in which he's still invested, meaning that he is the most compromised and conflicted leader our country has ever seen. He did this after seeing that China had interfered in 2 consecutive elections. He did this after seeing China take 2 of our people hostage. He did this after knowing that China had made incursions into our waters. How will Mark Carney ever protect Canada against Beijing's incursions into our territory, its interference in our country, or it's taking our jobs and our industrial base away when he owes them so much?
He has to tell us what he owns, what will happen with it, how it could, not that it does, how it could create a conflict of interest. People have to know who is that guy, what he owns, and if facing a choice between personal interests or friends' interests of millions of dollars, will he favor the people and the small families or the friends?
Absolutely not. First thing. Second thing I'll say, look, Mr. Poilievre doesn't understand the world. Mr. Poilievre is a lifelong politician. It's all he's ever done. These slogans, sound bites, slander, doesn't understand how the world works. China happens to be our second largest trading partner. It's our second largest trading partner. We have trade disputes with China right now, caused by them in the agriculture sector. It's one of the areas which we need to engage on. It's one of the areas, when you think about, again, the auto sector and the future of the auto sector, we've got to understand where China is, where China is going, whether or not there's any room for partnership in that. Look, I'm beholden to absolutely no one except to the Canadian people. I am here for the Canadian people.
So an interesting turn of events in the way that Poilievre fired back yesterday, and then Carney comes back today and tries to pop that balloon. And I don't think Carney did himself any favors with that response. I think I know where he was going with it, but beyond this loan that was negotiated on behalf of his former company, there has been a lot of talk around what he has in the blind trust, or what he took into the blind trust, because, you know, as you know, Eddie, once it goes into the blind trust, it's up to the trustee to look after it, and, you know, you're not aware of what the trustee is doing with the aspects of that, you know, of your investments and so on. So I think Carney tried to address the whole thing, but I don't think he really hit it head on in much, because Poilievre came out yesterday just swinging with the whole thing about the trip, the loan that was negotiated while Carney was there on government business. So, yeah, I don't know. What were your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. I'm not sure that he confidently tackled that particular question or managed to put out the flames that Poilievre started yesterday. And by the way, you know, Poilievre, he also knows how to respond to a question. He knows how to respond to a critique in front of a microphone and in front of a camera. And I think he's been trying to convey a message extremely well using his political background. Obviously, he's experienced in this, and he does a very good job of it. Let's call a spade a spade. The salvo he fired yesterday, I mean, it was well done from his perspective. I'm not exactly convinced this is something that is a campaign planners asked him to do. I think this is just something that he was responding to, and he came out to you know, respond to any questions that the reporters threw at him in front of cameras. And A, he responded. B, he threw out an obvious question that a lot of Canadians potentially might be asking themselves: Is this guy running the government, or is he running the government for the benefit of his pocketbook thereafter his tenure as prime minister is over? I mean, we get this question down in the United States all the time, and it's all about how much I can put in my pocket, right? Well, we don't work like that here in Canada. And, you know, I think Poilievre asked a really solid question. And I agree with you, Gary. I don't think he answered that question. He spent a little bit more time deflecting around some of the issues surrounding Poilievre. And he didn't come out of that looking exceptionally strong in terms of you know, his business life. You know, maybe at some other point he might do that. You know, obviously this is going to be a question that's going to be thrown at him by all three candidates, or you know, they're going to lob the grenade at him regarding his financial business work and what the trust is essentially doing in the debate. That's definitely going to come up. So he's got to be better prepared with this, not counterattack with issues, address that issue directly, and then counterattack with something else. So I agree with you. He didn't really do a great job there.
Here's something. Polyev, in his response yesterday, in his response, he said, I have a security clearance. I got it when I was a cabinet minister in the Harper government. So, and then he makes reference to this affidavit that during the Trudeau years, you had to sign, in addition to the security clearance, around, not discussing, like, basically an NDA, I guess.
Almost an NDA, yeah.
Yeah, around certain issues. To me, any discussion or any briefing you receive as a member of government, and you receive it from your intelligence agency or agencies, unless they indicate that it's okay to bring something up, it's, to me, it's all classified. You're being briefed as, you're being briefed not so much as a courtesy, but as a member of a government that will have to ultimately at some point perhaps make a decision regarding how to react or proceed with whatever the issue is that's brought up. And, I get that, I understand that. You have to keep a lid on things. You can't be running around using Signal and texting your group of friends, right, battle plans and everything else, and then just sort of brush it off. Well, to this morning they're calling it attack plan, battle plan, attack. Like, stop at the bull. You got caught red-handed. It was detailed information, and you put like that kind of information out on Signal. Yes, it's encrypted, but it's not foolproof, and obviously not foolproof when fools are using it, as we saw this weekend.
Yeah.
Who in the hell would do that unless you're doing it on a government-approved classified phone or communications device? And
not while you're in Russia, and not while you're traveling through the Middle East.
Yeah,
for all we know, Russians wrote Signal.
and they were so casual about it. But on the other side of it, Eddie, here's the thing: there was probably nothing in that the Russians and others on the other side didn't already know, because we know that the current administration is cozying up to Putin and company. So, but it's still, like, to me, if I had been the president, the defense secretary and the state secretary would have been in the Oval Office first thing in the morning, and the letters of resignation would have been pushed in their direction, and sign it, pack your bags, and get out. Simple.
Yeah.
That was a major, major faux pas. Period. I don't care how they try to spin it. Funny they're spinning it that way, but they were all wound up over the last number of years over Hunter Biden's briefcase, and then Clinton's email server. It flows both ways, boys and girls. So you got caught red-handed. The president should be showing some leadership. That's a stretch. Should be showing some leadership, and
he's pretending that this is his reality show. And what did he do in his reality show?
Yeah,
Get fired.
Yeah,
he just refuses to do that.
Yep.
Because that basically puts accountability in his table.
Right? So, regarding
anyway, we're digressing.
Yeah, exactly. That Carney did, or Polyev did say that that was a few years ago when he got that security clearance. He didn't say if he's had it updated since then, because you do have to go through that every so many years. And so we don't know. And yeah, okay, I could say I had a security clearance a few years ago too. But, every time we covered a prime minister or a member of the royal family, or, some other things like going to the La Pro nuclear generating, just different things, right? You had to get a security clearance. And then growing up, my father was Department of National Defense, and he had a NATO security clearance, which meant the whole family had to have background checks as well. So it was an ongoing thing. So Polyev did not make that clear. And I think that if I'm running to lead the country, and yesterday, before Trudeau resigned, I had a 20-point lead and looked like I was going to be the next prime minister. I'd be making sure that all of that stuff was current at all times, so that
that's a no-brainer. So he didn't do himself any favors either.
No, not in the least. In the meantime, Carney did start the whole process as far as putting his investments and such into trust. About a week, 2 weeks before he actually was sworn in as prime minister, and
as the law required, actually.
Well, actually, the law gives you up to 120 days after you're swearing in, I believe. There's a bit of a time. So he was well ahead of the game, and he kept pointing that out as well. Right. So the whole thing is kind of gray. All I know is, for my personal satisfaction, his stuff is in trust now, and Polyev says he's had a security clearance. All I want to know, is it current? If it's current, great. You know what? Yeah. Game over. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. So
yeah, let's move on to the important stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know.
Well, you know what? There's always going to be mudslinging. I mean, nothing's going to compare to what we just witnessed in the United States in terms of the mudslinging. Much of it one-sided. But you know what? Like I said, this is the first week of campaigning. They're going to throw the fluff out. They're going to throw stuff at each other. But when, like you said, let's get it over with and move on. Let's move on to the important things that's on your mind, Gary. That's on my mind, our wives' minds, and the minds of Canadians, and address that. Speak to that, because that is what's going to sway votes in this country for sure. That's what's going to sway votes. Critical, important issues to Canadians. Not who washed his pants last week and he didn't use the proper detergent. Let's get on with this. Seriously. Let's give off with it, guys.
Yep. And hopefully later this week, the two of them close the files on security and financial disclosure.
Yeah.
Because to me now, it's a non-starter. All Polyev has to do is say, yeah, my security clearance was updated on whatever date. Great. Yep. Game over.
Thank you very much. Let's move on.
And you can still say, I'm not signing an NDA. Well, okay, at this stage, that's fine. You're in a campaign anyway. I don't care if you sign the NDA. Just make sure your security clearance is current. And I don't know why his people haven't been advising him to do that, because there are so many other things that he could be defending, or at least going after his opponents on, and without having to address this every day, at least once a day, sometimes a couple of times a day. So anyway.
So let me ask you this, Gary. I mean, you've been on top of the media more than I have the last couple of weeks. Isn't it kind of uncanny that, I mean, at least from my perspective, where I've been sitting, you listen to Polyev, you listen to Carney, and you listen to Blanchette, they're speaking to each other about each other, But have you heard any of them raise anything about Singh from the NDP? Or has he become basically a non-issue in this entire conversation?
That's a very good point, Eddie. A very good point.
I didn't. Did you hear anything? Did you hear any mudslinging at Singh or anything like that I missed? Or
no, Singh has come out and he joined in the chorus of Carney should let us know what he had going into the trust, and also brought up Poilievre's situation with the security issue as well. But it's
yeah, like it's almost like a non-thought, like a complete afterthought, which probably goes to why you and I are looking at the polls of him going from a double digit to a single digit percentage voter count, potential percentage voter count. It's I think that the demise of the NDP is well underway. And you know what? I wonder what the debate's going to look like. I mean, are they even going to turn around and acknowledge the guy besides a handshake? I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
Well, he's going to come out slinging, and it's going to be millionaire this and billionaire that. I hope not. I hope not. Say it once, get it over with in the first 5 minutes, Jagmeet, but then get on to something more substantive. But it's the NDP. We're seeing the very quick decline of the New Democratic Party, and in some respects, it's a shame to see a party that had the kind of history that it has had, and how it has helped to drive some of the more progressive social programs that we have rolled out as a country. But, other than that, and especially over the last month or two, they're not relevant. They're not relevant anymore.
That's what I was looking for, relevancy.
Yeah. They managed to, to get the dental plan through, the daycare plan through. But that's it. And then even then, they didn't seem to be able to take as much credit for twisting Trudeau's arm to get those programs through as what they probably deserved.
Yeah, I mean, tactically, every one of the other candidates is, pitching fluff at their competition, but at the same time, they are beating their chest in terms of what they have accomplished or would like to accomplish, especially the had accomplished type of thing. And I haven't heard very much from Mr. Singh at all. Like, absolutely, this whole dental plan and whatnot. He should have been boasting this. He should have been going out saying, we've got the interests of Canadians in mind. We were behind this whole thing in pushing Mr. Trudeau to do this, that, and the other thing, and has not taken the opportunity to do that. Now, I don't know if that's because of a decision by Mr. Singh, or are his advisors basically telling him not to go in that direction. But you know what? If I had a single-digit 6% number that my party has in terms of popularity in the country, I'd be throwing everything at this. I'd be claiming things that I had done that I never did in the first place. He's just not promoting himself well enough to be found as a credible candidate in this particular election. He hasn't done any of that for me, and I guess it's out of sight, out of mind just doesn't work for me, and that's just the way I am. And I haven't seen him much, and I haven't heard him talked about very much, and he doesn't seem to talk about his successes very much either, which is unfortunate. So the ship is certainly sinking for the NDP for sure.
I guess he did take exception to some comments Tom Mulcair made the other day about the relevance of the NDP and how they're going to just basically fall off the map. I haven't had a chance to read what took place there, but Mulcair is not. He's on the mark. Like it's game over, and that's all there is to it. Just game over. So
a few months back, it's unfortunate Mr. Mulcair has decided to not re-enter the political sphere. So, something you and I thought about months ago.
Yep, yeah, for sure. And but he's I think he's quite happy where he is, doing what he's doing. He seems to enjoy his commentaries, and I know I do.
So do I.
Yeah, I love watching him on TV and reading some of his op-ed pieces. He's just so bang on. And again, my favorite saying, he's probably one of the better prime ministers that we never had.
Yes, correct.
So anyway, up next, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith. Well, she's ruffling some feathers, surprise, surprise. Before we get to that segment, though, I want to let you know that if you have an idea for a stream segment or information about a previous or upcoming segment, you can email us. The address is contact@nighttalk.ca. There's also a link to the email in the description below, and you can even catch it at the end of the show when our closing comes on. It comes up there as well. So Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is on the hot seat again. First, she met with Liberal leader Mark Carney last week prior to Carney calling the election, so he was in his prime ministerial role. Smith gave Carney a list of demands for Alberta and warned he could have a unity crisis if he didn't meet those demands. She has also been adamant she will not tolerate any tax on oil and gas exports from Alberta to the U.S. She's also ruffled feathers over remarks made on an American podcast earlier this month, where she suggested the U.S. president should suspend tariffs until after the election because they are hurting conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's chances, someone she says is aligned with the current administration's approach. But that helped a lot. And now she's headed to a U.S. fundraiser this weekend where she will make a speaking appearance with conservative media personality Ben Shapiro. Liberal leader Mark Carney was asked about this, and he had this to say about that.
With respect to the Premier's comments, I take note of her alignment of Mr. Poilievre with Mr. Trump, and would note that that's one of the decisions that Canadians will have to make, whether they want a government that is unifying, that's standing up for Canada, and is taking focused action to build a better economy, or they want division and Americanism, and that's what Mr. Poilievre seems to be offering, and just endorsed by the Premier of Alberta.
Ouch.
Yeah.
He lobbed that one in.
Well, quick, yeah.
So, is Smith saying and doing the right things for her province and the country?
That's up for debate. I mean, what are her constituents in the province of Alberta? Maybe. I mean, I don't have any access and privy to any reporting out there that basically says no or yes. But Alberta has typically been PC. In the majority of the cases, they vote PC. And I believe she won with a resounding majority, her mandate as it is right now. So obviously she has the ear of Albertans, and she continues to have the support of Albertans. And unless somebody says otherwise, I have to make the assumption that Albertans will support her in terms of the pressure she's putting on Carney and Ottawa, and the demand she's putting on Carney and Ottawa. And albeit I think a lot of what we've seen in the media is that Albertans seem to have an affinity for some of the policies that are being pursued by President Trump. So I really don't know. Is she, does she want to distance herself from the United States? Does she not want to distance herself from the United States? Does she believe either decision is going to alienate her from her base in Alberta? How much politicking is she doing in terms of her positioning right now? Is she looking at the future of herself and her party moving ahead, or is she thinking about the well-being of Canada in general? And quite honestly, to come out to say that there is going to be a national an issue with our confederation if Mr. Carney does not meet her demands, I think that's a little pressing in terms of her positioning and extremely aggressive. That sounds more like something that I'd be hearing out of the United States administration right now, not something from a premier in Canada. I just found that a little extremely aggressive.
Well, she is aggressive. There's no question. And today, and I didn't have a video of it, but I watched coverage on one of the news channels for a few minutes. She stood up in the legislature and just gave a fiery response as to why she felt it was in the best interest of Alberta and Albertans for her to go down and take part in this with the audience that she would be playing to, and that this is the sort of thing that we should be doing, and that she's not going to listen to some Easterner political pundit tell her what she's going to do and what's in the best interest of Albertans. And I get it. There's Alberta's always been kind of a low-key Anglo-Quebec in some respects, I guess would be the best way of describing it. There is a certain segment, and it keeps rearing its head every so often, of separation.
Yeah.
Because they feel that they've been dealt a dirty hand by Ottawa and the rest of the country, and that all they've done is contribute, and that it appears to them, especially over the last decade with Justin Trudeau and Stephen Guilbeault as Environment Minister, that they were doing everything they could to destroy the energy industry in Alberta. And you know what? Probably they're probably not so far off the mark with that one, which makes, that's a whole other discussion, because you just can't turn off the taps. Petroleum it's like a trade here between the US and Canada. We're so intertwined. Petroleum is so intertwined in everything that we touch or do through the run of a day that you just can't turn the tap off tonight and tomorrow will be a much greener day, because that ain't going to happen. But go ahead.
I just wanted to comment, Gary, that throwing that grenade at Carney right now, I think it's very important for what you'd like to see from the government in terms of supporting Alberta's requirements. And like you were saying, everything's about energy. And apart from hydro, when you're looking at the petroleum industry, that's what Alberta's all about. This is what the province was built on. And as a result of the contributions of this province, we have a pretty good country that we're living in, But at the end of the day, at some point, you have to say, well, what's in it for us? And I think that's what she's doing right now. And it's not a bad time to do it. I mean, you're looking at election season. You're basically pressuring the incumbent to actually come up and make election promises, whether Albertans are going to vote Liberal or not. She wants to get something out of this, and by the same token, without actually directly saying it, there is an unseen pledge of allegiance to Mr. Poilievre, and maybe this is an effort to swing some voters over his way and help Albertans get what they'd like to see. So it'll be very interesting to see how the Liberal Party and Prime Minister Carney are going to respond to these threats, first of all, and second of all, what they're actually going to put on the table to entice Albertans to vote Liberal, and B, to basically give something to Premier Smith that'll appease her and minimize this whole thing about unity issues. That's the last thing we need as Canadians right now is anything to even come close to a unity issue, because Mr. Trump is just going to jump on that. I mean, he looks at weakness and he pounces on it. So we can't be seen as a country with some unity issues, because this is exactly what he's going to throw out in terms of when he thinks about stuff 2 o'clock in the morning, and he'll come across us and pounce on it during his tweet fest, if you want to put it. So.
Now, Carney did say that the last meeting that he had with the premiers prior to the election call, they issued a communique, and it was unanimous consent as far as to the wording of the communique. I'd like to know, though, and that all sounds okay. Well, it was all, warm and cozy, but I wonder if it was, and I wonder how many times the wording had to be changed before Smith would sign off on it, because I could see her saying, "No, I'm not signing off on that because it does not reflect what I feel it should be reflecting on behalf of Alberta." So,
right.
But apparently, they found the wording that she did. She did sign off on it, so it was unanimous, and it has to be. The last thing we need in this country, and it's been happening to a degree, and I can see how it was happening with, again, the changeover as far as government was concerned. Even though Trudeau remained as prime minister, he was really in the background and probably checked out at least halfway anyway. So, but just normal human thing, right? But I would like to think that she's using the openings that she has with the hardcore conservative movement in the states that would have perhaps a pipeline into the White House, and using that to the advantage of Canada, Alberta, but primarily Canada, and Alberta wins if Canada wins, right? Hopefully that's the way it is. But, even you have to be so careful right now, because I thought about this when she was on the podcast and said, perhaps the president should pause the tariffs on Canada over the election campaign because it's not helping Poilievre. And, as somebody rightly said, well, she's a premier, but she's entitled to her own opinion if asked a question. Yes, but also as premier, you have to remember that there is a high level of diplomacy at play here, that people, because you are a premier, people hang on your every word. And if you're going to say something, you better damn well make sure that you're saying it in such a way that it doesn't go back to bite you in the ass, and that you're putting a message out, but you're not breaking with the unity of the campaign. And I think in this case, that was an extremely, it was just a complete.
It was an aggressive statement.
Yeah, it was a meltdown, and it wasn't even a poor choice of words. It was just a poor response, period. So I think she has to be aware of that. Other than that, how much damage is it going to do? I think probably at this point, she's going to do what she said she was going to do, and that's the end of it. The opposition NDP held a news conference on the front lawn of the legislature today saying that she shouldn't go and blah, blah. And that's when she let loose in the legislature in the afternoon and just hammered them big time. So she's feisty, and she's a very strong individual, and that's not a bad thing as long as you can temper it when you're in those positions of leadership.
True.
And with that, Eddie, day 4 of the federal election campaign is drawing to a close, thank God, because it's been a busy couple of days. Hectic 4 days, and we still have another couple of weeks before heading to the polls. One fact is clear, though, the outcome of this election will shape Canada's future and its place on the global stage more so than any other in recent memory. Thank you for checking in tonight to the stream and the video later on, and remember to like, share, and subscribe. Night Talk returns in 7 days. I'll say from Montreal, good night. Eddie?
Good night, everybody from Tulum.